Outer Wilds isn't the greatest space game because it has the most accurate physics, the biggest sandbox, or the most in-depth space experience. In fact, its strengths have nothing to do with being in space at all. It's the greatest space game ever because it does something so radically different from every single other space game on the market. Now, I know that this is a bold statement, but I've played tons of games in this genre, so let me explain. I've been playing video games for nearly 20 years and confidently say Outer Wilds delivers an experience unlike anything available on the gaming landscape today. Dare I say it, Outer Wilds could be the greatest space game ever made. Released on May 28, 2019, Outer Wilds has been out for nearly half a decade. It was developed by a small indie studio named Mobius Digital, and for anyone who doesn't know, the basic premise they went with for Outer Wilds is that it's an open-world mystery game about a solar system trapped in an endless time loop. But that somewhat simple premise leads to an incredibly moving piece of art. You would think with it being an older release, many would have just let it fade into the gaming graveyard. But that is simply not true. Go on any internet forum and you'll see this game still has a loyal and very devoted fan base around it. Furthermore, when you check out all of the awards it has gotten, you might realize that there is more than meets the eye of this unsuspecting game. And it was through all of these observations that sparked me to finally play this game that I had heard so much about. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this game is fantastic. So fantastic that I decided to start a goddamn YouTube channel to talk about it. Well, I came in expecting a fun game where I could float around in space, fly a ship, and fight aliens. You know, things that you normally expect from this space adventure genre. What I got was genuinely one of the best games I have had the privilege of experiencing. But before I explain why, let me give a quick warning that the content you are about to watch contains extremely minor spoilers for Outer Wilds. However, I can guarantee it will reveal nothing important about the narrative or big reveals in the story. Additionally, all footage used will be from earlier parts of the game, so this video is safe to watch if you haven't yet started the game. With that being said, if this game has piqued your interest in the past and you were just looking for an opportunity to play it, please play it now before watching. I truly believe you deserve to experience Outer Wilds knowing as little as possible going in. However, if you don't already have an urge to play this game or you haven't heard of it, let me explain why this will be the next perfect game for you. The first point that I think matters for the casual gamer like myself is that Outer Wilds contains 0 upgrades. Yeah, 0. In fact, there are no suit mods to acquire, no keys to collect, and no XP to level up and unlock new abilities. There is nothing like that. See, Outer Wilds does something so different from most games today. Juggernauts of the space genre, such as Destiny 2, have loot to grind for and then lock off certain areas through means of level cap or certain weapons that you have to collect first. And Destiny's focus on this grind can become tiresome for someone who just wants to hop on for an hour or two after work. But when Outer Wilds delivered an experience free from all of that, I found it jarring at first. I had become so accustomed to grinding and leveling up for new areas that when Outer Wilds sent me into space with no barriers, no direction, and no clues, I almost didn't know what to do. Not having a big indicator of where to go next or a progression bar to check felt different, but not in a bad way. Once I got used to it, it was refreshing. Something so different was now on the table. The way Outer Wilds does progression is totally unique. Instead of giving new abilities like a double jump or a dash, Mobius Digital decided to give you absolutely everything up front. They don't do upgrades, rather they organically teach you how to use what you have in new ways when the time is right. And let me say, this is the way I wish many games would adopt. I felt so satisfied pulling out one of my tools in the game and discovering that there had been a whole new way to use it right under my nose. I just hadn't seen it yet. Outer Wilds masterfully uses this art of hiding in plain sight for so many things, just like the example I gave with that tool. They create a small solar system but filled it so densely with puzzles and areas which can all technically be accessed right from the start, and all that's missing is your personal knowledge and understanding of this wonderful world. I found it so much easier to immerse myself in the story when nothing was hardlocked behind a level cap, a key I'd missed because it was hidden in some corner, or God forbid, a paywall. As a result of these observations in game design, it was around this time I started to see bits of why this game has such a cult following. In making this game, the team behind Outer Wilds made another key design decision that sets this game apart from any other game. They decided to limit your time in their world. 22 minutes. 22 minutes is all the time you have to explore this universe. 22 minutes before you're sent back to exactly where you started. only keeping knowledge you gathered from the previous loop. Design choices like this are what separate Outer Wilds as one of the greatest gaming experiences ever. Let me explain further. While a few other games, such as Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, have dabbled with this concept of a time loop, there are none that do it exactly like Outer Wilds. Taking Zelda, they designed that game to be where you were in a loop that lasted 54 real-world minutes before it resets you. This time constraint puts pressure on the players to rush through certain quests before the reset, or else then they would be forced to attempt it again from the start. This is draining because the quest must get done before you can progress the story. This is where it differs. Outer Wilds does not have this problem because they don't do a quest system at all. See, knowledge is your currency in Outer Wilds. Everything that is discovered in one loop adds to your knowledge in the next, each loop feeling like a different experience even though the physical world never changes. No quests bar your ability to explore an area, no characters hold secret knowledge to areas, and there's nothing locked behind an objective. It's just your knowledge and curiosity to discover that drives where you go next. It is in these 22 minutes that keep the pace of the game in this really wonderful sweet spot for casual gamers. You have enough time to explore one or two places or jump from one clue to another without feeling rushed, but there's also not so much free time that areas start to feel stale. They have struck a nice balance, honestly. In addition to the 22-minute loop, the resets are treated as a good thing in this game. Unlike Zelda, as mentioned before, that punishes you for dying, Mobius Digital decided to encourage resets and trying new things. When you inevitably meet your demise in Outer Wilds, you lose nothing. Your knowledge of an area is kept and updated in what's called your ship log, offering up a handy way to connect clues and jog your memory if you decide to take a break. This is perfect for a casual like me who hates when games make it a second job to stay up to date. I don't want to have to watch a lore video to remember what I'm doing. That brings up another good point on time commitment. See, I finished my playthrough in just under 14 hours, only playing when I had free time and wanted to play. It took me about a week and change to complete this game using zero help at a leisurely pace, so you can comfortably expect to beat this game in a similar time of maybe 14 to 16 hours. I think what helps with this rather manageable completion time is that the game doesn't force you to backtrack when you don't need to. The game will tell you when you miss something using that same ship log, which sounds small, but is actually a really nice feature. It's because of this that missing a small detail isn't really a game breaker. In my playthrough, I had many areas I would explore but miss a little bit of writing or clues, and that was fine. And the reason for that is because no one place has the exclusive answers. And rather, each smaller location has bits and pieces to a larger connecting story, and every one location will point to another location, so it's always giving you another story beat to explore next, but it'll never outright tell you what to do next. All of these decisions make the pace of the game so satisfying. Good pacing is nothing without a solid narrative though. It is this method of storytelling that kind of just guides you, that's then paired with an incredible story that truly sets Outer Wilds as a space game completely unique to itself. Mobius Digital knew they didn't have the budget the size of Bethesda or Bungie to make massive space games, so they made another brilliant design decision. They focused all their efforts into creating an emotional and deep experience, targeting what feels like a completely different audience in what is technically the same space adventure genre. Now, I must tread lightly in this section because I promise no spoilers to the narrative, and you will actually see the same sentiment all over the internet if you look. The one thing universally Outer Wilds fans agree on is to avoid spoiling it for new players. So I'm gonna keep it vague. Anyways, how do you take a game about space, the literal vacuum of space, and end up creating one of the most emotional experiences ever in gaming? Furthermore, how do you fit that game in the mystery, adventure, and horror genre while still providing a consistent experience for the players? Outer Wilds tells a real story doing this, not a gimmicky story so that you buy the DLC, a story that has a complete arc with characters you feel for and understand. It doesn't do open-ended seasons with narratives spanning 5+ years like Destiny. All Outer Wilds gives you is a complete story that the writers clearly knew what they wanted to say. It's about humanity, hope, and even coming to terms with death. It tackles things so many games are afraid to do today, and it made me remember just how good a game could be. And for me, I think it's one of the most enjoyable and heartfelt emotional experiences in gaming since, well, a long time. Yet another reason why this is so easily one of the greatest space games created. Outer Wilds gives you the reins to explore, discover, and make your own decisions. This is evident from the very start of the game. There is only one mandatory interaction in this entire game, and it happens during the tutorial. Even during that interaction, there is nothing that they blatantly tell you to do. The character you speak to even asks what you think you'll do once you're in space. There is no hand-holding. And after that conversation, the world of Outer Wilds moves at its own pace, ignorant to wherever you decide to go and whatever you decide to do. What I think this game does differently, in a good way, is that you are more of a bystander in this great story of huge stakes. That's another thing that makes Outer Wilds so different. While you may be in an open world discovering new things and exploring new areas, you're merely a fly on the wall. Everything that happens in this world will happen with or without you being around it. It's honestly a breath of fresh air to be a small part of a massive layered story. But no great narrative is complete without a good soundtrack, and oh my gosh, the audio, man. The soundtrack to this game is top notch. The emotions felt in the note compounds the more you get into the story. It truly feels like the soundtrack is telling its own story that blends so well with what you play in-game, and certain narrative moments will be met with certain audio cues, and you begin to recognize these cues, and it becomes this amazing story of its own. So there's not too much more I can say about it, since music is something to behold during your playthrough, so I'm going to leave it at that. But seriously, the audio and soundtrack is incredible. Tying all of these points together, it's easy to see Outer Wilds didn't want to be a massive RPG or the next Grand Theft Auto. What they wanted was a brilliant game that begs to be experienced through a cohesive, emotional, and digestible story. Outer Wilds made the gameplay and mystery fun because they understand what a game should be. They haven't forgotten under the dollar signs and the incentives what it means to make a game that people want to play. Mobius Digital nailed this game. I can truly say I've never played a game that hits the same spots as Outer Wild. It doesn't have infinite possibilities, it doesn't have complicated mechanics to learn, and it doesn't demand any sort of grind. What it does have is the story, one filled with mystery and a childlike wonder for discovery. A story that makes you feel and hope, and one that can even make you sad. It amazes me how a game set in the vastness of space manages to evoke such real and strong emotions, while still immersing the player in a mystery, horror, and exploration experience. I mean, come on, that is masterclass storytelling. That is masterclass game development. This is why we play video games. And you pair all of this with unique pacing and interesting mechanics, and this is what I believe to be one of the greatest space games ever. Outer Wilds made a game the opposite way of all industry practices today. They flipped the script and took risks. There's no gimmicky storefront, no sketchy monetization tactics such as a battle pass, limited time event, or platform lock content. Outer Wilds delivers exactly what I feel has been missing for so long, and I can't believe it took me 4 years to play it. As I close, I leave you with this final statement. It's not merely a game to be played, but an experience to be had. Thanks for joining me. Keep it casual.